Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Persona 5 Tactica. For the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Like the other spin-offs, this follows the events of Persona 5's story directly, with the Phantom Thieves discovering themselves pulled into an alternate universe where they have a chibi stylization and mostly dialogue encounters treated as if this was a visual novel. But when it comes to the core gameplay, this is unlike anything else we've seen thus far from a Persona 5 experience. The core gameplay is rooted in the fact that characters want to try to use the barricades or walls or whatever structure that is able to block incoming attacks. The primary weapon of choice are guns when it comes to the Phantom Thieves, and their long-range attacks can be nullified if they hit an enemy that is properly guarding themselves behind a barricade. But the same can be said for the Phantom Thieves, as enemies can hit barricades and miss shots completely if the player has placed their characters in a strategic position that is advantageous to them. Melee attacks will knock an opponent backward, and depending on the angle, it may knock them out of cover. If that happens, you have the ability to actually do a one more turn, because that character will take a critical hit and be downed temporarily. Of course, downed opponents take a lot more damage, and if you can land more criticals, it'll make it much easier. Speaking of advantageous, one of the big additions is the changes when it comes to the all-out attacks. One form is the triangle attack, where you're able to surround a particular group of enemies in a triangular fashion and pull off an all-out triangular attack. There are also these high-end voltage attacks that are usually rooted in whatever type of element that the character utilizing it is associated with. For example, Morgana is rooted in the wind element, the Garu element, so his voltage attack is wind-based. The voltage meter fills as the protagonists get attacked or, of course, land attacks themselves. And of course, you can't have a Persona game without the Persona themselves. And in this game, you can actually put sub-persona so that the persona that you fuse or are able to collect as you progress through the story can be given to a different character instead of just having them all be stacked on Joker as they were in the previous Persona games. So this allows for characters to mix and match their abilities. So Ann, for example, could have fire and ice for her abilities instead of just being a fire-based attacker, as well as having buffs and debuffs that can span across different characters in your 3-member unit that can be switched out if you have enough members on your team. If one falls, you can use a baton pass to switch out the KO'd characters for one that has not been knocked out. So you can switch out a character that has been knocked out with one that has not, though the baton pass are limited, depending on what level of difficulty you've chosen at the start of the game or changed as you progress through the game. It also must be noted that this game doesn't have any elemental effects when it comes to enemies, but does have elemental status properties. Electric attacks can actually stun enemies instead of causing elemental damage due to electrical weakness. Ice can freeze, wind can actually knock a character backward, which could be good for moving them away from a barrier, and fire can inflict long-term burn. While it is a little disappointing that there are no elemental weaknesses associated with particular enemies, it does make it more player friendly, as you don't have to worry about learning the elemental weakness of every enemy. One of the more enjoyable aspects about the gameplay is the stage criteria for completion. There are optional objectives for each mission that you take part in. These 3 check boxes that need to be ticked off if you want to get the maximum out of every successful mission usually involves all of the protagonists not getting KO'd or ending the fight in a certain number of turns, like 7 turns. Sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult depending on the stage, so players will have to either go back and save scum or just have to accept the fact that they won't get a perfect stage completion. There are, of course, skill points that can be acquired as you level up your characters and level up the Phantom Thieves as a whole. These skill points are able to be spent across each character. They have their own individualized skill point amounts. so they can upgrade their own personal skill trees. And these skill trees not only allow for general additions to their character like replenishing SP with every turn, but also specialized abilities or increases of certain abilities depending on what their persona is. From a narrative perspective, the game doesn't necessarily rock the boat. Of course, the Phantom Thieves are pulled into an alternate universe where they have to confront corrupted adults who of course have their own reasons for being the way they are and want to take advantage of their powers. This also leads to the introduction of certain characters, including a politician that has gone missing at the start of the story, and a new playable character in Irina, who is the leader of a rebel corps that are trying to take down all of these would-be conquerors in this alternate universe. As expected, the game is technically crisp, has a great soundtrack, haven't had any technical real issues like slowdowns or hard crashes or the like. It's a polished experience as you would expect from Atlas and a Persona game. Though there are some reductions when it comes to the stereotypical Persona experience, like the lacking calendar, overall, Persona 5 Tactica is fantastic. If you're a fan of turn-based RPGs of a tactical nature and haven't gotten sick of the Persona 5 franchise, this is a perfect game for you. And even if you're not a fan of the Persona games or Persona 5 in general, the gameplay can make a lot of people forget why they don't like Persona. It must be stated though that the game has the asking price of $60, so it may be a little too steep for certain people. It may be best to wait for it to go on sale for a little lower, but if you're a fan of tactical RPGs, if you're a fan of the Persona 5 franchise, there's no point of waiting. Just get it when you have the opportunity to and enjoy it. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Persona 5 Tactica for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now if you don't mind, the Phantom Thieves are entering a new realm and have to help escort a young politician, and if any enemy gets in our way, we'll have to light them up and give them no choice but to say, "Oh Lordy."